This is the Money Made Easy course. We're going to talk about real estate. Now, in earlier classes, I told you there's 5 steps to the system. Number 1 is to make money. Number 2 is to separate your money. Number 3 is to give some of it to the church or charity of your choice. Number 4 is to save and invest. And number 5 is to spend the rest. Now the problem is that most people have a job, and that's the only source of income that they have coming into their family. They might have 1 job or 2 jobs, the spouse might be working. What we want to do is we want to use real estate as another source to add more chunks of cash into our world. And I'm going to teach you some of the basics of how we're going to do that. Some of the real estate we're looking for is going to create cash. Some of the real estate we're looking for is going to create streams of income. So let me teach you the basics of how we're going to do that with real estate. Now, when you think of real estate, there are 2 major ways to make money with real estate. Number 1 is quick cash. How do we make a chunk of cash when we do a piece of real estate? Number 2 is a stream of income. Okay, with real estate. So you should be writing this down and drawing and doodling this with me as I do it. So if you want to make quick cash, we need to flip some properties. Buy it, fix it up, and turn around and sell it. Or just buy it, control it, and sell it. Okay, we want to use an option or something else to be able to buy it, control it, and turn around and sell it. If we have a long-term rental, then that produces a stream of income. Now, with that being said, there's 3 major chunks of what we're trying to do. We need to find good deals. So we're going to find it. Find good deals. Number 2 is we need to get our financing or fund it. So we need to get our financing in order. And then number 3 is that we need to farm it. How do you make your profit doing it? Now, this was taught to me by a friend and a mentor of mine that passed away a few years ago by the name of Nick Kuhn. And he bought and sold over 1,000 properties. So all I'm asking you to do is to buy 1 or 2 a year to help increase your net worth. And so we're going to use these 3 things. We're going to find good deals, we're going to figure out how to fund them, and then we're going to figure out how to farm them so that we can make a profit. Now, when it comes to finding good deals, just be aware if there's 100 properties out there for sale right now, 100 properties that are out there for sale, there's only a small percentage of those where the seller's motivated or that it's a good deal. Now, if we're just trying to buy the house and keep up with inflation and hopefully make a little profit in the end, then just go buy anything. But that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make a profit. We're trying to flip it for some quick cash or do some kind of an option where we can make a chunk of money right away. So out of 100 properties that are for sale right now, only about 3% of them fit our criteria. 97% of all the properties out there for sale do not fit our criteria. This is where the seller wants their cash, they want their terms, and they're willing to wait till they get them. Only about 3% of all the deals out there are great deals that we're looking at. So you have to have a system to find those good deals. But the first thing is to know that out of all the properties that are out there for sale, only a small percentage of them fit our criteria. And so we have to find ways to get people that have good deals be able to send to us. Now, the next person is very crucial is you need to learn value. And until you understand value, everything is worthless. You have to determine value. Now, there's different ways to determine value. But, for example, if my daughter goes to shop for shoes, she has a pretty good idea of what those shoes really cost in different places. She's shopped around and she knows how much those are worth. Now, if I was to do shopping for shoes, I wouldn't have a clue. Now, the same is true when it comes to buying a house. You have to learn value, and there's only a couple ways to really learn value. You can ask a professional to tell you what the property's worth. Well, there's a place and a time for that, but not right at the beginning. The other way is for you to learn value as well. Now, the way you learn value is by looking at properties. Some of those properties you'll actually drive by and get into and see how much they are for what you get. We're going to compare the square footage of the property. We're going to compare the number of bedrooms. We're going to compare the number of bathrooms, and we're going to look at the location. And if you really want to learn value, you have to do a lot of this. So my goal for you would be to go out and start looking at properties, 10, 15, 20, 30 in a marketplace. The more you look at, the more you keep track of with the square footage, the bedrooms, the baths, the location, and most importantly is the price, the more that you can get a good idea of what property should be selling for. Now, when we're looking at the price, we want to take the square footage and we also want to have that in correlation to what the price is. So if you have a property, and again, it doesn't matter the pricing here, we're just going to add zeros, but let's say that you have a property that's $300,000 and it only has 1,000 square feet. Well, that means that it's going to cost you $300 per square foot. So if you found a property that was $250,000 and it was still 1,000 square feet, the cost per foot goes down to $250. If you found a property that was $100,000, and we'll just use $100,000 for easy math, and it was 2,000 square feet, that means that it's selling for $50 a foot. As you look at other properties in the neighborhood, if this property was $75,000 and it was only 1,000 square feet, then it's $75 a foot. And so that's one way that we can really determine value, is by how much does it cost per square foot. And so your goal is to look at as many properties as you can until you really understand value. Now, when you go into a marketplace, you're going to see some of the similar homes with a similar size, similar makeup, number of bedrooms, number of baths, that you can start keeping track of to determine what the cost is per square foot. Because if you look at 7 of these or 10 of these or 20 of these that all have the same makeup, you'll be able to determine if you're getting a good deal or not. Is this property under market value? You'll also be able to get inside and be able to see what kind of condition it's in. Do you have to do a lot of fix-up, a lot of paint and powder, or is it something you can buy and move on right away? So we have to learn value. Now again, we can do this on our own, which I highly recommend. We want you to be able to look at enough properties and keep track of those properties so that you have a better idea. Because if we have to ask a professional what it's worth, then it's going to cost you quite a bit of money. Now there is a time and a place to be able to ask a professional when we need to get some kind of an appraisal on a property, but usually that's down the road. So the first thing is you have to learn value. Until you learn value, everything is worthless. Now once we've done that, and we're starting to find properties, and you realize that the vast majority of properties are not properties that we want to buy. 97% of them do not fit our criteria. So what do the 3% have in common? Well, most likely the 3% have a flexible seller. Now if you have a lot of cash and great credit, then you have more tools in your toolbox than most people do. If you don't have enough cash or enough credit, then you need to rely on other people or other strategies to be able to do that. So I'm going to teach you a couple strategies of deals that I've done to be able to give you kind of an overview of some of the deals that I did when I got started. So I'm going to tell you about a little property that I bought. It was a 4-unit building, and this building is one that I bought many years ago. In fact, I bought that property 33 years ago. Now, again, just remember, add zeros to whatever we talk about. It was a little 4-bedroom property, a little 4-unit property, 2 bedrooms each, and on this property, it was worth about $80,000. Now, how did I know it was worth $80,000? Well, because I looked at a lot of other properties that were somewhat similar that had been selling, and this property was worth about $80,000. I ran my own ad, and one of the reasons I do that is because I want sellers to call me. If I have to go through 97 no's to get to 3 people that are interested, that's a lot of work. I would rather advertise and have those 3 call me, so I spend my quality time talking to the people that are truly motivated. Now, what makes somebody motivated? They might have bought a new home and they have the old home that they need to sell. They might be getting a divorce and they're splitting up and they have to sell the property. A big one is that when they're moving and they've got another property and they want to get rid of this property, they can be more flexible. Maybe a death in the family. There's all kinds of reasons what makes somebody motivated to be able to sell. And so the key is to find that. But this little property, the value, I'm going to say the value was $80,000. Now on this particular property, The gentleman that had bought it many, many years ago, and he had paid it off, so it was free and clear. There were no loans on the property. So I said to him, well, if I went to the bank and I got you all this money, what are you going to do with it? If I go get a new loan and I get you all this money, what are you going to do with it? Now again, remember, he's probably about 1 in 100. He was very motivated. He lived next door and he was just tired of putting up with management and people. Okay, and so he says, well, I'm just going to put the money in the bank. And I said to him, well, if you got all this cash, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. And so the property value was $80,000. I offered him $60,000 for that property, which he accepted, because he had bought it for half of that amount. Now remember, this was 33 years ago. We're just going to add some zeros. I know that you guys they're saying 80,000. I can't even buy a driveway for 80,000. It doesn't matter. I've bought millions and millions of dollars, but the reason I'm showing you this one is because I'm going to show you how I did the exact same technique when I bought 7 buildings that were all fourplexes, and I bought 28 units. But he had bought it for $30,000, and over the life of the loan, he had paid it off, so it was free and clear. I said, what are you going to do with the money? If I go to the bank and I borrow money to pay you, what are you going to do with the money? And he says, well, I'm going to have to pay some taxes on it. So if I buy this property off of him for $60,000 and I give him all cash, meaning I gave him a down payment and I went to the bank and got a loan for the balance, and he walks out of $60,000, he's going to have to pay taxes on it. And it's coming in one big lump sum. Because it was all paid off, he has to recapture any tax benefits that he'd already had. And so he was basically in a 25% tax bracket. We'll use that. That means that $60,000 windfall that he gets, he's going to have to pay $15,000 in taxes. Now, he wasn't very excited about that. Number 2, I said, all right, with the $45,000 that you have left over, what are you going to do with that? So, well, I'm going to take it down to the bank. And I says, okay, well, how much is the bank going to pay you? He goes, well, I'm just going to put it in my checking account. Well, how much is the bank paying on your checking account? Well, about 1% is all. So if he was making 10%, that would be $4,500. That's not what he's making. He's making 1%. He was going to make $4,500, $450 a year from the bank. That's not very much money. He would have been better off to keep it and rent it out. So you see, he's got a problem. He's A, got a tax problem, and B, once he gets the money, he said he wasn't interested. He was an older gentleman who had been retired. He was just going to put it in and get a 1% return, which is going to produce $450 a month for him, which is not very much money. So I says, well, how about if we do let me do a different option with you. Instead of that, how about if I buy the property off of you for $60,000, and I'm going to come up with $5,000 as a down payment. Okay, I'm going to do that. $5,000. So I still owe him $55,000. $5,000 down and a $55,000 I still owe. And I said, instead of me going to the bank and getting a loan or a mortgage company, how about if I simply pay you? And he started thinking about that, and he goes, well, what if you don't pay? And I said, well, if I don't pay, you can always foreclose on me, but I'm going to make this work. I'll make it pay for you. And he said, okay. And he says, now, this is when rates was quite a bit higher. Remember, this was 33 years ago. And so I agreed to pay him 10%, which was quite a bit. I agreed to pay him 10% interest on a 15-year loan. So that means of the $55,000, I'm going to make him monthly payments of $591.03 a month times 180 months. Now, when you take into consideration for that, I'm going to pay him well over $105,000 over the time of that loan. He's going to make more money in interest from me than he did from the amount that I owed him. Okay, so he liked that idea because he was going to get $591 a month on that property, and he didn't have to manage it. He didn't have to do anything. He just got a check. And when I got started, this was the second or third real estate deal I ever did. I wrote him a check every month for years for $591.03. That's why I remember how much it is. He loved it because he got that check every month with no headache and no hassle. Now, how did that affect his taxes? Well, because he was getting a small amount every month, his tax burden, his percentage was a lot less. So he did have to pay a little bit in taxes, but his bracket was a lot smaller, if anything, because that's the only income that he had coming in. So he liked that. Number two, he liked it because he was getting his payments. Now, back in the day, he wasn't getting much more than $600 a month in rent. Now, again, don't laugh about these numbers. This was 33 years ago. I'm going to show you what I did a while ago and what it's worth now using the exact same strategy. And so this was a good deal for him. Now, it was a good deal for me too because I was just getting started in investing. And so the $5,000 down was something I had to come up with. But there was 4 buildings, 4 units, and each of those units had a $200 security deposit. So they gave a deposit because the rent was only $200 a month from what they had. So the security deposit was $200, so that got me $800 right there on the spot. Plus, when I become the owner, I get to have anything that's their rent that they're going to pay in the future or any other deposits that they had. Okay, and so that happened to be another 200 times 4, which is another $800. So I actually got a $1,600 credit because when that renter moved out, then I had to give them their deposit back. But when they moved out, then a new renter moved in. So really, my $5,000 was only $3,400 because I got security deposits and I got the last month's rent became mine. Now, what was nice is that I closed on the 1st of the month. And because we closed on the 1st of the month, I had new money that came into me in rent that day. So I picked up another $800 in rent. So basically, my $5,000 got knocked down by quite a bit. So I only had to come up with a couple thousand, $2,000 to $3,000 was closing costs to buy that property. Number 2 was that I increased the rents, and so my rent was high enough to make the payments and to be able to do all the management. Now, that's not a very good story. It's a small little story. It's not really a big deal. But what I learned from it, and to do the management of it, I learned a lot. When a toilet would break or a plumbing problem would happen, I would call a plumber. And the plumber would come out and say, it's whatever it is for me to make the trip. Back then, let's say it was $75 just to make the trip. And that also bought me an hour of his time to fix the problem. Most of the time, they'd fix the problem in 10 minutes. And I'd say, hey, I just paid you for a whole hour. Teach me about this. And so I would have a plumber teach me. So a lot of that stuff I could fix. And when I was getting started, I fixed everything. Now, I managed everything. I did it all myself. As I've grown and grown and grown, I've hired other people to do that. So now I hardly touch any of it. And we've managed a lot of properties over a long period of time. So now this property here, you can see that I'm going to be paying that off over a period of time. And so we set this up so that it would pay off in 15 years. So let's say that we start right here, and the purchase price on that was $60,000. Okay. Now what happened was the rule of 72 says that as properties go up in value, you divide that number into 72. And most of the time, any place in the country will go up in 20 years, they will double. Some places will double in 10 years. Okay. And so as I bought that property, the value is up here. And so the value went up, 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 and up, up. And so today the value on that property is probably $350,000, maybe a little bit more. Now, I owed $60,000 on that property, but over time I paid that loan off, so the loan came down to 0. So I had 0 loaned on the property. And so all of that is my equity. So this little $3,000 or $4,000 investment that I made over a long period of time has turned into a $350,000 windfall. I took $3,000 as my down payment and I turned it into $350,000. Now, was it fun? No. Did I have to rent out the property? Yes. Did I have to handle tenants when I got started? Yes. Was a lot of a lot of pain, a little bit. But was it worth it? Absolutely, it was worth it, because the property's gone up in value and the loans I had went down to nothing. Now, as the rents went up, I started paying him off even faster. Now, back then, the rates were quite high. When the rates came down a couple percent, down to 3%, I went back to him and I said, hey, I'm paying you at 10%. I can go to the bank and get a brand new loan and pay you cash and pay you off with the remaining balance that I owed you. And he says, I don't really want that because I like what I'm getting. And I says, well, you know, I can borrow this money a lot cheaper than 10%. And so just with the question being asked, he said, well, I'll just reduce my rate. So we reduced the rate from 10 down to 7, and that dropped that loan even faster. So it didn't take 15 years to pay off. It took a lot less than that. So we had that property paid off for about 10 years. Now, not as only has the property gone up in value, but all the rental income that I've collected over the years has also gone to the very top of my funnel. And so we've been making money on this property for many, many years. And now it's gone up in value. It's worth quite a bit. And then we're going to decide what we do with it. But you get the concept on there. A small amount over a long period of time produced a big chunk of money. Now, I was pretty motivated to do this because I was in college. I didn't have much money. I didn't have any credit. All I had was knowledge. And my friend Robert Allen taught me about real estate. I went to the Nothing Down seminar. I give a lot of credit to him. I give a lot of credit to my mom and dad, mostly my dad, for teaching me about real estate. And so if you get this concept, then that makes a lot of sense. So I bought it first for the small down. I had him finance it. I had the renters that made the payments every month. They paid it off until I had no loans on it, and the property's gone up in value. So I took a $3,000 down payment and turned it into a $300,000 or more value over a long period of time. So that's a very, very good rate of return. Now, that doesn't really excite you, but let me tell you, I used the exact same formula when I bought another property that had 7 buildings times 4, which was 28 units. And it was very similar. This person had bought these properties years before I bought them. He had put his son and his brand new daughter-in-law in charge to manage them. They weren't very good at it, and he became what we call a don't-wanter. He didn't want the properties any longer. And so there are 7 buildings times 4 units, or 28 units completely. And so I approached him, the owner, and I said, well, I would like to buy these properties off of you. What do you want to get accomplished? And as we were talking, I said, well, if I go to the bank and get all new financing and pay you off, because he had owned them for many years, and his purchase price was very small, you know, because they'd owned them for many years, and they had doubled in value. And I explained, well, if I do this and pay you off, you're going to have to pay taxes on all that. And he happened to be an accountant, and he understood that. He didn't want to pay taxes on it. So we used the exact same formula as what we did with that. I bought these properties for $1,680,000. And because the son and daughter had kind of wrecked them, I made an agreement that I would buy them in 60 days from then. And what I was going to do is that I was going to come up with 0 down. I had no money to put down on them because I was going to go in and fix them up and things like that. And he was fine with that. He didn't care. Remember, he's that 1 in 100, that 3 in 100. Most people are not that way. But he understood that, and he was tired of the management, and he didn't want to hassle because his kids were managing it. And so it was a 0 down deal for me. And it was designed so it would pay off over 25 years. Well, long story short, I got those properties with 0 down, and I started making payments over the life of that loan. The loan started at 8%, and then as the interest rates dropped, I renegotiated that loan down to 6%. Suffice to say, it's done the exact same thing. Our purchase price was the $1.68 million, and we had a loan on that. Over that next 20 years, that property has almost tripled in value. Just for easy math, let's say that it's worth $3.5 million. Okay, so it's gone up. The loans have gone down to 0 because as I've had the rents come in, I was able to pay the loan. And so basically, that's a $3 million profit over a 25-year period of owning these properties. Same strategy. Now, was it a hassle? Yes. Did I have to kick some people out? Yes. Did I hire some good managers to manage it for me in the future? Absolutely. Did I get tax benefits? Absolutely. But you can see the concept is that over a period of time, the properties went up in value, and the loans got paid down to zero, and so all that equity is mine, or profit is mine. Now, that's a longer term thing that we're looking at. That didn't really make any quick cash. So let's do another case example of another property, of one that you can do where you could flip it and make a quick chunk of cash. So in this example, I'm going to use some round numbers because it'll be easier for you to understand the concepts on this. But here's a property that you could find right here. And the value of that property, let's say, is just, we're just going to use 100,000 because it'll be easier for you to understand the math. I don't care if it's 500,000, I don't care if it's a million, it doesn't matter. We just add zeros. It's the strategy that we're looking for. But let's say that the value of that property is $100,000. If you found that property, you wanted to resell it, what is the real value you could resell it for? And in this case, we're saying that the value was $100,000. Now, there happened to be a loan on that property for $80,000. There was a loan on that property. And so we find the seller and we say, what is it you really want to get out of this property? Now, we know the values in there. A lot of people don't understand the values. And so we offer them $85,000 for the property. Okay? So the loan on here is $80,000. We're going to give them $5,000 down. And the total purchase price is $85,000. Now, there's already an existing loan on there, so we don't have to really get the financing on it. Now, this is a technique that I've used many, many times where I know that the value of that property is worth more. In fact, I know that if I put some paint into it and clean it up, get rid of all the junk around it, that property is worth more like $120,000. I've had deals where I'll tell you about one where the husband and wife got a divorce, and as part of the divorce, the husband and the kids got to stay in the property, and they were kind of deadbeats. They didn't make the rent payment. They didn't make any payments. They didn't even pay the utilities. So the utilities were shut off. The water was shut off. Everything was shut off. And the kids had motorcycles, and they drove the motorcycles around the backyard and made a track out of it. Now, suffice to say that the neighbors didn't like that. When the old washing machine died, they just pushed it aside and put a new washing machine there. It was junk. I was running an ad, and she had left this guy, and she found my ad, and she called me. I went down, looked at the property, I came back, and I made her an offer. It was a ridiculously low offer, but she took it. And the deal was that I was going to go in and fix it up. And now there's two kinds of fix-up. There's one where you've got to put a lot of money into it, and there's another one where you don't put much into it. Some of the deals you don't put anything into it. You just resell it the way it is. But in this particular case, in this example, this is a property that I knew that if I put some fix-up into it, I could make a huge dent in it. But see, that's what created what we call a don't want her. She didn't want this house. It was a divorce. It was ugly. She got the house as part of the divorce. He got the kids as part of the divorce, and she won out on that one. And so in this particular case, I made her an offer, and the offer was that I was going to do this kind of a scenario where I was going to have her make the payments on this. I would pay her some money right here, and then I would take a little money and fix it up. And so that's exactly what I did. Instead of paying the big down payment, or instead of paying the loan on there, I simply took my money that I was going to do, and I fixed up the property. Now, again, if you're going to paint it and if you're just going to clean the carpet, that's no big deal. You're getting an option. An option, or a delayed closing, is what we call it. Now, a delayed closing is when you have access to the property, but you don't really own it. If you go into a big bookstore, that bookstore doesn't own those books. The publisher owns the books. The bookstore just has them on sale, and when they sell them, they pay the bookseller. Okay? When you go into Walmart, all that product in Walmart, Walmart doesn't own it. They just have it on consignment. They have an option to sell it. If they sell it, then they pay the guy that put it there their money. If they don't sell it, they just send it back. And so basically the same thing is true here. I got a chance to control this property without actually owning it, but I had an option. I had a legal agreement to buy it, and I also had a legal agreement to sell it. Well, some people call that a delayed closing as well. And so I did a little bit of fix-up, and I found a new buyer that wanted to buy this for $110,000 because I gave him a better deal. He came in and bought it on $110,000. I took the offer for him to buy it, my agreement. I took the offer for him and the agreement from the new buyer to the title company. So you have a title company here in the middle. So I took my offer, my agreement. I took the offer of the new guy's agreement. I gave it to the title company who does all the legal work. And basically, the new guy bought it for $100,000, and he came in with cash and cashed him out. And he paid that person $5,000, and I made the $15,000, and the title company does all that for you. Okay, that's basically a flip. There has been properties where we've done that very similarly when you find a good deal. And again, the concept is finding a deal that you can tie up and control. You have an option or a delayed closing. You write an offer, you get that offer accepted, you go in and do a little bit of fix-up, or you turn around and resell it. Basically, when you list your property with a real estate agent, you're basically giving them an exclusive right to sell it. They don't own it, you still own it. And if they find a buyer for it, then they execute on it and they make a commission. The same is kind of true if you do an option or a delayed closing. You write an offer that says, I'm willing to pay this much money for this property on this time frame. And if you don't find a buyer, then you don't exercise your option. Now, you might lose a little bit of money in the case if you have option consideration. Most of the time, the way that I did these deals, I found a great deal. I got the agreement to be able to buy it for price A, and I turn around and sell it for price B. Now, again, that's part of what we're trying to do. We're trying to find properties that we can flip or make quick cash, and we're also trying to buy properties that we can do long-term rental incomes. Anyway, this is Tom Painter giving you a quick, brief update on real estate. We'll have more classes like this where we get into a lot more detail. Thanks again for being in our class. See you later.